bad.
Almost, I guess it's like the baddest of the bad moms. They're using our neighbor's house.
Can I just minimize it then?
Yes. Because they came by and really loud. Like top cards in our mailboxes, and they actually looked at her house like weeks ago and then told her, no, we found something else. And now they're coming back around, wanting to use her house. So I don't know what changed. The director finally looked at them. It works.
That's great.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so what are we doing here?
Let's see, how you doing?
What's different now?
Make sure I see it again. Awesome, thanks.
It was one piece of land.
Do that. All right. And that is the second item you said, Russ? Okay. All right, good evening and welcome to the City of Smyrna Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Today is Monday, April 10th, 2017. It's 6 p.m. and this meeting is called to order. For those of you joining us for the first time, this meeting is conducted much like a council meeting. As such, each application will include a presentation from city staff, followed by a question and answer session between staff and the board. Once we have all the answers, we'll then have the applicant come forward, state their name and address for the record, and tell us a little bit about their application. At that point, when all of our questions have been satisfied, we'll have anyone that's here to speak in favor of or opposition to the application come forward. And we have a sign-in sheet at the podium. If you would state your name and address for the record, sign the sign-in sheet, and please address all of your concerns to the board, not the applicant. All right, thank you. And we'll do our best to get any of your questions answered that are not answered with the presentation. Okay, the other thing is if you would please turn off your cellular equipment as it tends to interfere with our recording equipment. Thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda is item 2017-133. This is zoning request 17-007. It's rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of two single-family residents. It's 0.384 acres. Land lot 664. The address is 2611 Argo Drive, and the applicant is Anthony Lim. Mr. Martin, the background, please.
Good evening. This request will be heard by y'all tonight. You'll make a recommendation to mayor and council, and it'll go before mayor and council on May 15th. The subject property is located at 2611 Argo Drive, which is in the 3rd Ward. The property is approximately 0.384 acres in size, and the applicant is planning to rezone the property from R15 to RAD conditional for two single-family homes. There's currently no home or structures on this property, so it's a vacant site. So this will be an addition of two homes to the neighborhood. With this rezoning, there will be a land use change from suburban residential to medium density residential. And as you can see on the east side of the property that it joins, it is medium-density residential, and then the surrounding area is, to the north, west, and south is suburban residential. Here's the proposed site plan. The applicant is proposing to maintain the setbacks for the R15 zoning district, which are 35 feet on the front, 10 on the side, and 30 on the rear. They're proposing a 5-foot sidewalk along the frontage. And then they have also taken into account areas for the stormwater management facilities, and they'll have individual facilities for each lot. And this is a rendering or a typical home elevation that they plan to build. And here's the subject site. And then these are the adjoining properties to give you an idea of what the surrounding neighborhood looks like. Community Development recommends approval from R15 to RAD for the development of 2 single-family homes with the following conditions from Section 1201 of the zoning ordinance related to the composition of the home, stormwater management facilities, the underground utilities, traffic improvements, burying of debris underground, the tree ordinance, and landscaping requirements. In addition to those standard conditions, we're proposing several special conditions. The first being requiring the following setbacks: a front of 35, a side of 10, and a rear of 30. Number 11, a minimum driveway length of 22 feet. Number 12, the minimum lot size should be 8,000 square feet. Number 13, the minimum lot width should be 50 feet. 14, the home shall have a minimum floor area of 1,800 square feet. 15, the requirement for a 5-foot sidewalk along Argo Drive. 16 is the protection of trees within the disturbance area that are planned to be saved. Number 17 is tying the rezoning to the specific site plan, and 18 is tying the zoning to the building elevations shown. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions for Mr. Martin? All right, thank you, Rusty. At this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit about your plans, please. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Lim. I live at 483 Gene Mill Drive, Monroe, Georgia, 30656. And I applicant address at 2611 Argo Drive, Smyrna, Georgia 30080. I want to develop the residential housing in city of Smyrna because we see city of Smyrna has been growing rapidly, and the need of residential also increase. The applicant will promote the development around this area, which is still undeveloped. 2-story single building home will be 1,800 square foot, and the value around 200,000. Thank you.
Mr. Lim. Mr. Campo.
Just one question. You are aware that the community development staff has recommended that you maintain the 50-foot.
Yes,
And
I
you're,
already fixed it.
You're capable of doing that?
Yes.
Fine. Thank you.
And you're talking about the 50-foot lot width, correct? Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, I already fixed it with the survey.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lim.
Thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing. At this time, we'd like to ask if there's anyone in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to this application. This application is Z17-007. Okay, with the record show, there are people in attendance, but none of them want to speak. Anyway, all right, yep.
I'd like to make a motion. Am I on? Yeah. I'd like to make a motion for that were recommended for zoning request Z17-007 from the change from R15 to RAD conditional.
Was a motion to approve, correct?
Yes.
Motion to approve, Ms. Hine Warren. A second. Mr. Roberts, please vote. Your application is approved 7-0. This will be heard at the mayor and council meeting. So we want to give me the date. Good luck with your application, with your plans. Thank you. All right. The next application is Z17-006. Rick Kolb and Kimberly Norwood. Are they here yet? They are. Yeah, we are. We're going to push them to the back of. We're going to postpone them to the end of the agenda. So if I get somebody to make a motion to postpone them for to the end of the agenda, and then vote on that, and if it gets pushed, we'll push them. Go ahead.
Yeah, I make a motion to push case Z17006 to the end of the agenda, Joel.
All right. A motion to push it to the end of the agenda. A second. Mr. Roberts' motion. A second, please. Okay, that'll work. That's fine. So, second. Ms. Hine Warren, all in favor of putting it to the end of the agenda? Okay. It's approved. It's approved 7-0. So we are going to put that at the end of the agenda. Okay. All right. The lucky item C, they just got 20 minutes of their life back. It's 2017-135. This is zoning case 17-004. This is rezoning NS conditional to NS conditional for the development of a daycare facility and a 3,500 square foot retail building. This is 1.9 acres at land lot 621, 4390 South Cobb Drive. Blastoff Construction is the applicant. Mr. Martin, in the background, please.
All right. This rezoning case is going to travel the same path as the previous one. You'll hear it tonight, and then it'll be heard on the May 15th by the mayor and council. This property was originally rezoned from OI to neighborhood shopping conditional back in 2007. The application originally started in 2006 and it carried over into January 2007. Anyways, the site was never developed. It was approved for 19,000 square foot retail center with several variances, and it was zoned to a specific site plan and certain building elevations. As I said, the site was never developed. It's laid vacant since then until this applicant is submitted for rezoning. The site is located at 4390 South Cobb Drive. It's approximately 1.9 acres in size. The applicant is requesting to build a 12,000 square foot daycare facility along with a 3,500 square foot retail building. The 3,500 square foot retail building will be on one parcel, which is approximately half acre in size, and the daycare facility will be on its own separate parcel, which will be approximately 1.4 acres in size. There is no land use change associated with this request. It is has current future land use designation of neighborhood shopping. The uses that they're proposed will fall within the neighborhood activity center land use requirements. As you can see, most of the surrounding property is in unincorporated Cobb County, and the properties to the north east, and west have a future land use in Cobb County of Neighborhood Activity Center. And then to the west, it has a medium-density residential. Here's the currently approved site plan from the zoning case back in 2006. As you can see, there are several retail buildings. Here are the approved building elevations. It was a brick exterior with metal standing seam roofs, very similar to the Publix development at the corner of East West and South Cobb. Here's the proposed site plan by the applicant. This is to show you where the proposed property line is to subdivide the property into a half acre and then 1.4 acres. The proposed building setbacks for the retail building are a 50-foot front, a 10-foot side, and a 30-foot rear, which meet the general commercial requirements. The building setbacks for the daycare are a 50-foot front, a 10-foot side, and a 15-foot rear. They're requesting to reduce that rear setback from a 50-foot requirement down to 15 feet because it adjoins a residential neighborhood. That 15-foot reduction was granted in the previous request, so this is not changing anything from that previous request, and mostly this is due because the site is bisected by a sanitary sewer easement and a drainage easement, which I'll show you here in a minute. This is the proposed location of the detention facility. This is the location of the 20-foot sanitary sewer easement that runs through the property. And then the 20-foot drainage easement that comes through that conveys the stream through the property. In addition, there is an off-site stream that I can't show you on this plan, but part of that off-site stream overlaps its buffers into the subject property, and that area happens to be the area that's called out here. So with this request, there are 3 variances. The first one is to reduce the lot size requirement from 3 acres down to a half acre for the South Cobb Drive corridor. The second is to reduce the rear setback from 50 feet down to 15 feet for the daycare facility. And the last is the ability to encroach into the city's stream buffers. Staff has reviewed these 3 variance requests. We are supportive of the first 2 for the acreage and the setback, but staff is not supportive of the parking or the encroachment into the stream buffer. With that being said, we believe they can modify their parking design to be able to accommodate the minimum parking requirements and stay out of the stream buffer. Here are the proposed building elevations. And just to give you a better idea, I don't know if it's coming across, but that's a picture of the stream last week when it was raining. And then the picture on the bottom shows you where that stream is going through the property and then across to, I think across South Cobb Drive or back towards Cooper Lake Road. This is a picture of the subject property. And then these are the adjacent developments to the site. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning of the subject property to NS conditional for the development of the daycare facility and retail building with the following conditions carried over from the original zoning back in 2006. And those changes are highlighted in red. Everything will stay the same on this page. Then down to stipulation 9, we updated the site plan to reflect the plan that was presented here. Stipulation 10 was adjusted to reflect the building elevations that were shown here and the date they were submitted. Stipulation 16 was reworded to just maintain an evergreen buffer and maintain that buffer in accordance to section 503. It called out for a specific type of tree, a Leland cypress. We tend to have issues with those trees. Sometimes they get diseased and they tend to die off, so we want to have some variety in the type of species that are going to be planted in that buffer. And number 22, since staff is not supportive of the stream buffer encroachment, we have eliminated stipulation number 22, which allows for buffer averaging for the encroachment into the buffer. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Martin?
I'd like,
Ms. Monroe?
what's going to be, I guess, Cobb's going to do about the traffic flow right there? I mean, there's going to be a lot of left-hand turns out of there right into, especially with kids in the car and stuff.
This is a state highway, so state DOT will review the plan, and they'll limit their driveway based on what they've seen, what they think is necessary. Right now, it's reflected as a full access drive. I think they've shown preliminary plans to the state DOT, and from what I understand, you'll have to ask them to elaborate on what the state came back to them with.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Martin. At this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit about your plan. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ellen Smith. I'm an attorney with Holt Nays at Coffin Wasserman. It's a mouthful. They haven't changed it to the Smith Law Firm yet, but soon they will. Along with me tonight is Frank Turner with the applicant, and we respectfully request your approval of this application. Rusty has done my job for me in giving you a summary, but I do want to give you just a little bit of additional background to the extent that it's helpful, and then both Frank and I are happy to answer additional questions. So as Rusty said, this property was rezoned from O&I to NS in 2006, 2007. It was finally approved in April of 2007 with a number of conditions. The request before you tonight is really a downzoning. We are seeking to rezone the property really to just implement this new site plan. We're not changing from the NS zoning, but we are reducing the density by about 3,300 square feet. It's roughly a 17,000 square foot density change and reduction. One of the things in the staff report that you'll read is, of course, the summary of all of the 9 conditions or the 9 requirements that you as a planning board are required to consider with respect to rezoning application. We agree with all of them with respect except for one, and that is that the staff has concluded that this property has a reasonable economic use as it's currently zoned. And I would say to you it's sat vacant for 10 years because it in fact does not have a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. When it was zoned in 2007, obviously height of the market, you all have experienced that throughout the city with respect to other projects coming back before you, including of course the Publix that's right behind me. This property is similar in that it has sat without any takers on the marketing efforts of the sellers to sell it for a number of years, and that's the reason that we're here before you tonight. We think that the daycare proposed use is supported by need throughout the city, and from a traffic perspective, because I know that question was asked, I think that the daycare traffic will be less than the retail originally proposed, obviously at different times, but daycare drop-off and pickup is staggered along with a little bit better than shopping is. There is an application for a permit, driveway permit with GDOT. I understand that that's for a full access permit, and we haven't, to my knowledge, gotten any negative comments back from GDOT on that, but we certainly can continue that discussion. There are, as Rusty mentioned, a number of site constraints for this property. It's a little bit funky in type and just the shape of it in terms of topo, in terms of existing stream buffer to the south, in terms of the existing easements that are there. Also, if you looked on your site plan that's included in the report, It's cut off here, but just a little bit to the north, there was another little piece. There are 2 parcels that the same owner owns that are in unincorporated Cobb County. We initially had filed an application to annex those 2 parcels. It sort of wraps around the chevron. It did nothing for the development really except add acreage, and there was potential for stormwater detention to be on those couple of parcels. The county has objected to that annexation request. We have withdrawn that annexation request. So if you see those 2 parcels to the north, just a little bit of a weird trapezoid, that is no longer before you, and we're here just on the 1.9 acres. We do, as Rusty said, seek to develop the property with 2 uses. The elevations that he showed you were for the daycare facility. Just like the elevations that were approved in 2007, it's for a brick veneer finish. The only change really is that with respect to the roof, it's not proposed to be a metal roof, it's proposed to be an architectural shingled roof. So a little bit different than what was before you or before the mayor and city council in 2007 in terms of an aesthetic. But certainly within the overlay district requirements, the retail and the other buildings will meet all of the overlay district requirements from an aesthetic standpoint. With respect to all of the conditions, and I should mention this, with respect to the stream buffer variance, we agree with staff. We think that we can reconfigure the parking. We have engaged Core Blue, which is an environmental consultant that specifically deals with stream buffer issues, to work with us to determine exactly where those state waters lie, confirm where the 50, 75-foot buffers are, and to pull the parking out of that buffer. And we're pretty confident that we can do that as well. So understand that the recommendation is for denial of that variance. We certainly agree to that as well. With respect to the subdivision of the property and the acreage, just to give you the reason for the subdivision, first, the acreage is 1.9 acres, so we're under the 3-acre minimum lot size to begin with. That said, because of the chevron and the gas station, there's a little bit of environmental issue at the north side of the property where the retail building backs up to the chevron. The reason we need the subdivision is to allow the state to approve a daycare license. It has to be on a different parcel that has never had any environmental contamination. So by drawing that subdivision line, we meet that requirement from the state. That's pure and simple the reason for the subdivision request. With respect to the setback variance on the rear, it does mirror exactly what was approved in 2007. As a zoning lawyer, I would tell you variances once approved are on the property, period. So it's kind of an extra request in that it's added or highlighted here, but it's already part of the existing zoning for the property. So we're just mirroring that request. With respect to the staff conditions and the conditions held over from 2007, we agree to all of them with 2 changes. They are conditions number 11, special conditions number 11, and special conditions number 17. Special condition number 11 deals with loading and unloading and hours of loading and unloading. The daycare operates 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And if that condition, I think it's intended to be truck loading and unloading to deal with the retail aspect. With all due respect, that's not applicable at this point, and we'd ask for that condition to be stricken. Certainly the city has a noise ordinance, and irrespective of what the loading requirements are, that noise ordinance would protect our residential neighbors. But mostly just out of a concern that we don't have parents violating a zoning condition if they drop their child off at 6:30 in the morning when the facility opens. And number 17, and I did bring pictures of this, 17 requires that the HVAC units be on top of the building. For retail, we agree, that's fine. For the daycare facility, we propose that they be on the ground, screened by a brick enclosure. And if you give me 2 seconds to figure out computer stuff, show you what those look like. So those are examples of a brick enclosure that we have done at other facilities and would like the opportunity to do with respect to the daycare building. So with all due respect, we'd request that item 17 be revised to provide that it either says that they be screened and delete the HVAC will be on the ground and just say screened by brick enclosures, or however semantics work. I'm not particular with respect to that. It's just that it doesn't make sense to put them on the roof. Happy to give you any information you'd like about Legacy Academy, which is the proposed daycare user. They have been around for a number of years. Mr. Turner's wife was the founder of these academies. There are a number of them throughout the Southeast, including 7 in Georgia. This would be the first one in Cobb County. Legacy Academies are accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. It's a voluntary accreditation, but it focuses on requiring schools to meet specific quality standards, child to teacher, rate, room size, all of the things that you would want, both as a parent, but as a city with respect to your daycare operations. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right, any questions for the applicant?
I have one. Ms. Smith, do you know, I guess with the 12,000 square feet daycare, how many children would this be able to accommodate?
So the fire marshal has one standard and the state has a different standard. The state's old standard was 35 usable square feet per child. The state's requirement is now not just a number of square foot per child, but also based on the number of tables, mats, coat racks. It's a whole complicated thing. What I can say is that we equip our facilities to start with 169 children. That is not intended to be a maximum. That's what we equip with to start.
169?
Yes, sir.
Is there a maximum?
Not that I have been advised of. It would be set by the fire marshal and by the state.
Okay. Any other questions? Line one?
Does the owner Legacy Academy plan to continue owning the retail unit and managing that, or are they going to sell that off?
My guess is they would sell that off, but I don't know that that decision's been made at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. We may have you come back up depending on how the balance of this goes.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. At this time, we'd like to ask if there's anyone in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to this application.
Good evening. My name is Johnny Hanks, and I have been a Smyrna resident for many, many years, 1996, and I actually live in the property directly behind where the plans are for and was part of the hearings back in 2007. And I am here to oppose this development and specifically for the traffic. We have significantly more traffic than 2007, and we lovingly nicknamed the center lane, as we are trying to get out of our neighborhood each and every day, Suicide Alley. So we're now going to have competing traffic flow from the Publix and then this particular retail and daycare establishment, and we are going to be sandwiched in between. So I am here to express my opposition to the project.
And you say your last name was Haynes?
Hanks, Hanks. Tom is my brother, not the Tom.
Nice.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanks. Appreciate you coming out. All right.
He said I could go in front of him.
Come forward.
Hey, I'm Loretta Cumnick, and I also live in the neighborhood that the drive will be next to the drive of this development, and my concern is the traffic. So I guess a minimum, they're going to start out with 169 cars coming in there every morning to drop off from 6:30. Usually drop off from 6:30 to 8. People have to be at work by 8 o'clock. There's a KinderCare right around the corner at Cooper Lake in South Cobb, and I can attest by that there is a constant stream of cars in and out, circling in the morning trying to drop off. But they have the luxury of a light at Cooper Lake Road. We don't. And again, leaving, either turning left or right is already very difficult in the morning, and getting home in the afternoon, it's very difficult. The flow of traffic on South Cobb Drive is horrible at peak hours, and that's You know, if it was a retail space, I have to disagree when she said that a daycare would be better than retail, because retail's gonna be staggered. At daycare, the morning is gonna be bad. Everyone drops off in the morning hours in that hour, 1.5 hour time period.
Thank you
Can you
very
sign
much.
this?
Please sign in. We got to look you up later. They promise not to raise your taxes. Sorry, it's a little joke. Please. Just put your name and address. You don't have to put the other information. Social security number, you just put it on a notepad. Not here. No, I'm joking. Mr. Murphy, would you like to?
Sean Murphy, I live at 3282 Lee Street. I didn't come to speak on this initially, but as I was watching the presentation, I felt compelled to come up as a parent with 2 young children, just to speak in general terms. We're in sore need of daycare in Smyrna. The waiting list at most of our community daycares is significant, and traffic withstanding, I don't know much about it, so I apologize to the ladies. I don't know about that, but I can tell you that the location seems to be appropriate, being on South Cobb Drive. To me, I think it would be a good decision for Smyrna, and it does appear to be a downgrade from the retail that would be there to, on the old plan. So that is all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. All right, any other, oh, good evening, I'm sorry.
Good evening. I am Loette Swinton, a longtime Smyrna resident, and I recently moved into Ivy Glen subdivision, who is we're the residents behind where this is scheduled to be built or planning to be built. I've been there almost 2 years, and it is literally, I wouldn't say taking your life in your hands, but it's very dicey getting out of that subdivision, especially if you have to make a left-hand turn. I mean, you've got to pray that the traffic will give you a little bit of space so that you can go through. And then when you get to the middle lane, who knows who's about to swipe you? It is really, really tough. And not that I'm against business, that is not the case, but at least retail is a staggered time set. But from the drop-off to the pickup, I can imagine that left turn. I don't even know how they would get them in and out. That left turn lane it would just be solid all the way back to maybe East West Connector with 160 something kids. So, just for the safety of me and my family, my neighbors, I am opposed to it. So,
Thank you very much for your comments.
You're very welcome.
And please sign the sign-in sheet.
Oh.
Good evening.
My name is David Ludoff. I live at 3769 Wakefield Hall Square in Smyrna. I've been living in the community for about 4.5 years now, and I've got 2 small children. When my children were born, we couldn't find any daycare facilities or schools within the area, so we do have a full-time nanny because of the shortage. So I'm in favor of this. I think there's a need in the community. There's certainly a shortage in quality daycare and schools within our community today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, anybody else? All right. Do we have any further discussion or questions for the applicant and or for Mr. Martin? Thank you.
I would highly encourage the neighbors also to continue the transportation and parking issue with GDOT, because it is, many of us don't realize that that's not a city road and it's a state highway. So I think that you coming tonight and having these strong opinions is very good for all of us as a community to stay involved. And so I hope that you'll continue that as the applicant stated that they've applied for.
Mr. Campo?
I think we understand your concerns with traffic, but it's already been approved as as retail property. Something's going to go in there. I think in her presentation, she mentioned that it's a daycare, and the traffic is going to be bad in the morning. I see it there. I mean, I live in the area. All of us do. But, you know, the fact is it's already been approved for retail, and something's going to be going in there, so no traffic. And I think a daycare center is going to reduce traffic considerably because you're not going to have retail 15 hours a day there. It's going to be a small retail space. So I think, you know, it's maybe it's the best choice for that property. And with it,
Go ahead, Mr. Campo. Go ahead.
well, I was going to make a motion.
Well, I don't want the motion just yet, sir. If you just give me a second. Can you put up the site plan that's approved, please? Mr. Monroe's got a comment behind you. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Also, Rusty, can you address if we make a motion to move forward, how did we revise number 11 and 17 for the applicant?
We,
That dis-
oh,
I-
go ahead.
I'll take it. The issue of whether you want to amend 11 and 17 is completely up to you. If you decide that you want to amend 11, and I understand the petitioners do not want any confusion with the loading, unloading, I think you can just add wording to that just at the end of that sentence, it just says, with the exception of drop-off and pick-up for children. So that clarifies that the daycare center would be exempt. There's still a retail component to it that I'm not sure we should delete the request, item 11 entirely. With regard to 17, you know, if you want to allow them on the ground, we can word that to the effect that the retail use, that sentence applies to the retail use that's already there, but that the daycare may be on the ground, provided that it's indeed screened from the right-of-way and adjoining residential properties. With that, to be honest with you, I was this is the first I've heard of that particular request tonight, so I don't necessarily have an opinion on that at the moment. But if you want to amend, I would just add additional wording that makes the distinction that the existing sentence applies to the retail, and then add the daycare center is allowed to have the HVAC units on the ground, provided they're still screened from right-of-way and adjacent property, adjacent residential.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Do you have any other comments? Okay. All right. Mr. Campo.
Mr. Chairman, concerning rezoning case I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezoning request pending resolution to the parking area redesigned to meet the stream buffer requirements.
We got a motion to approve, and we need to stipulate, well, we don't need to stipulate. Are we going to recognize the request of the applicant on stipulation special condition 11 to add daycare unloading as early as 6:30? And then stipulation 17, the AC units.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, not to be out of order here, instead of trying to wordsmith this on the floor,
Yeah.
what I would suggest, because staff can work that wording up between now and the time it goes to council and send it to the applicant, as well as anybody else who's interested, you need to decide whether you want to do it at all. If you say, yes, we want to make a distinction on the loading, unloading between regular retail loading and then loading and unloading with regard to the daycare. You need to just tell us, yeah, we want to do that, and we'll come up with the appropriate language.
Okay, he's already got a motion to approve. Why don't we see if he gets a second on that? And then we'll just move forward and let you guys work out the verbiage between now and mayor and council. Is that all right?
Yes, I think that's a little easier.
We have a motion to approve, Mr. Campo. Do we have a second? We have a second, Ms. Hine Warren. Please vote. Okay, the application is approved 7-0. Thank you and good luck. All right. Just don't understand why y'all don't want to stay. Sorry, I'm in a weird spot. All right, do we want to go through, is the applicant for the second item here? Everybody here? Okay. All right, so now we're going back to item B on our application. Zoning request, or 2017-134, zoning request Z17-006. This is rezoning of CBD conditional to RAD conditional for 3 single-family residences. It's 0.76 acres in land lot 486. This is 3071 and 3075 Nichols Street. The applicant is Rick Kolb and Kimberly Norwood. Mr. Martin, the background, please.
All right. This zoning request traveling the same path as the other two. This property was part of an assemblage in 2007 for a mixed-use development. The property was assembled as part of a parking area for that mixed-use development on Concord Road. The development never happened, so the site has remained essentially the same since 2007 without any changes. Subsequently, in 2012 and 13, home builders purchased part of that assemblage, the property that was fronting on Medland Street, purchased that property, rezoned it, and built 4 single-family homes. These 2 lots are the remaining lots from that assemblage, and they have 2 existing single-family homes with a couple accessory structures. The applicant is recommending or requesting to rezone the property from CBD conditional to RAD conditional for the development of 3 single-family homes at a density of 3.95 units per acre. There will be no land use change with this request. It's going to remain mixed use. The land use designation to the north is mixed use. To the east, south, and west is medium density residential, which is a density of 4.51 to 6 units per acre. Here's a proposed site plan. As you can see, the property has a pretty funky geometry. It's also got, some triangular pieces, which create some issues with regards to development and setbacks. The proposed setbacks for lots 1 and 2 are a front setback of 25 feet, a side of 10, and a rear of 25. For lot 3, the triangular piece, they're requesting a variance to reduce the front setback to 15 feet and a rear of 20 and a side of 10. There'll also be a 10-foot right-of-way dedication included. Here's the proposed individual stormwater management facilities. Here are the proposed home elevations. They're going to be traditional architecture, front entry homes that are all front on Nichols Street. This is the site today. And these are the adjacent properties. You got the DDP parking area to the rear of the property. You got the David Weekley homes along Medland Street, then the townhomes as part of the Laurel Commons development, and then the Medland Park single-family subdivision across Nichols Street. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning for 3 single-family homes at a density of 3.9 units per acre with the following conditions. The standard conditions from Section 1201 of the zoning ordinance related to the composition of the homes, stormwater management, underground utilities, traffic improvements, and the prohibition on burying debris, streetlights, tree ordinance, and landscape plans. In addition to the standard conditions, we're requiring some special conditions. Number 10 is the requirement for minimum setbacks, and that's a front setback of 25 feet on lots 1 and 2, and 15 on lot 3, a side setback of 10 feet, a rear setback of 25 feet on lots 1 and 2, and 20 on lot 3. Number 11 requires the minimum floor area for the home to be 1,800 square feet. Number 12 is for the dedication along Nichols Street, a 10-foot dedication. Number 13 binds the property to the site plan submitted, and 14 ties the property to the elevation submitted. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Martin? Thank you, Mr. Martin. All right, at this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit about your plan.
Hi, I'm Sean Murphy, 3282 Lee Street, and I'm representing Rick and Mary Norwood. You all have seen me here with Rick a couple times in the past few years, and you're probably familiar with his work by now. I formerly lived on a street right around the corner from here, and I met Rick in the process of developing a lot on the street, and I was also developing a lot across the street, and we've become friends and colleagues, and I've been representing him on all of his zoning work in Smyrna. And one of the reasons that we've done that is I really like what product he's been building. It's a nice mid-level house that's appropriate for the neighborhood. Typically, they're coming in close to $400,000 now, as opposed to a lot of the 600s and 700s we see everywhere else. Our neighborhood has been largely a rental for many years, with about 50% rental, and he's been buying up a lot of these old rentals and developing them into new houses where we get permanent homeowners. And this particular site on Nichols is the site, the last kind of vestige of old Smyrna. There's a couple of homes there, as you saw in the pictures, that are fairly dilapidated, have not been cared for. I think the current owners, after they had that deal fall through, lost interest in maintaining their property in some respects. There's several large dead trees out front, and so I think everyone in the neighborhood is going to be very happy to see these lots get developed. I'll also add that I tried to convince Rick to go for 4 lots on this property because I thought he could do it. But he wants to build the house that they're comfortable with. And again, as Rusty pointed out, the triangular nature of these lots and there's quite a few large trees made that fairly difficult. We would have had to cut down everything out there and really shoehorn them in there. So I think this was a really good solution with just the 3 lots. And each lot has an ample yard. This is less dense than any of the housing around it. You've got townhomes to one side, and I think you said 3 or 4.5 units up to 6 units an acre across the street, and we're under 4 here. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Sean. All right. Are there any questions for the applicant while they're still here? All right. This is a public hearing. At this time, we'd like to ask if there's anyone in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to the application. Okay. There are none. Any further discussion? All right. Well, in the absence of further discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Ms. Hine Warren, busiest woman tonight.
I would like to make a motion to approve 06 for the rezoning from CBD conditional to RAD conditional for the 3 single-family residences at the current location of 3071 and 3075 Nichols Street with the special standard condition, with the standard conditions as well as the special conditions by community development.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Ms. Lightfoot. Please vote. The application is approved 7-0. Good luck, guys.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Oh, Ms. Heinward. Okay. The next item on our agenda is we're 3 for 3 tonight, or the applicants are 3 for 3. I think that's the way we should look at it. We've approved them 3 with 0 being denied. So the next item is 2017-132. It's the presentation of a draft Spring Road corridor, Livable Centers Initiative, master plans by the Sizemore Group. Good evening and welcome.
I'll introduce you.
All right. Where do you want me to put Mr. Sudrith?
Just for the record, you all know this, we have multiple studies going on. This is the Spring Road LCI corridor study. Sizemore Group won the bid, has been working with staff for many, many months, starting last fall. So with that, we felt it was appropriate now, because we're coming to a close after all of our public meetings and so forth, to give you just a draft of where we are and what the presentation is about. And so with that, I will turn it over.
Hey, I'm Bill D. St. Aubin. I have a brief presentation. I'll try not to make it too long, leave time for any questions you might have. Hopefully I know how to run this. Yes, looking good.
Well, we don't want to see Fayetteville. No offense.
I don't either.
There we go.
One is the zone planning right there. You guys be looking at your screen, so if I do a PowerPoint, if I do a laser, it won't mean anything to you.
No. Not unless you want to sit on Earl's lap.
Later.
Yeah.
Yes.
It will be from mayor and council, but the limb's left. And Tom already knows all the answers.
Okay, so I'm sure some of you have been involved at different points, but I'll take you through for those that haven't been involved. This study area is primarily the Spring Road corridor, and then the few opportunities along there where some redevelopment is more likely going to happen. Some has already happened, like on the Jonquil Plaza side. But it's a pretty tight study. Usually when we do LCIs, it's deeper than that, but also LCIs don't go into existing residential neighborhoods and do much. So it's an appropriate scope, especially with the impact of the Braves on one end of the, what's the best way to flip an arrow? Yes, that would be good. So the team we brought to the table, the Sizemore Group was the lead, but we had some other really good members that we prefer, and we're glad we got them for this. Nelson Nygaard does some of the best alternative transportation planning in the country, and they joined us. And then Noel Consultants, one of our favorite market analysis firms, and you'll see some of their work in this. And where we are in the schedule, as I mentioned, we've been working on this since September. That yellow dot kind of, or the star, represents our next step. So we've been through a lot of community meetings and planning efforts and transportation coordination meetings. This is pretty much the final steps at this point. And what we were given, the assignment we were given, is to create a dynamic, vibrant, and multimodal corridor for Smyrna, connecting residents and business to everyday services, community amenities, and entertainment. And it's quite an entertainment district that's coming on the other end. What we try and do at these livable centers studies is look at what the community wants to do. What is the market telling us? What are the market forces, the analysis? And then what are the grant goals? And then try and focus on where all that overlaps, and that's where you can get some real traction. So we had several community meetings. We were at the Jonquil Festival. We had community meetings with 60 people. We had surveys. We had stakeholder interviews, design workshop, and a final community meeting. The themes we kept hearing throughout were preserve small local businesses along the corridor. You got some funky businesses growing along there that are pretty cool, and they were involved, those ownerships. Provide alternative transportation options to help reduce vehicular traffic. We have a really innovative solution I haven't seen before on that. Improve traffic flow during peak time, travel times. Good luck. Create shopping, retail, entertainment destinations to attract visitors to experience Spring Road. Develop street networks to improve both regional and local connectivity. Provide amenities for cyclists and pedestrians to safely travel the corridor. Create a sense of arrival to Smyrna along Spring Road, and make Spring Road more attractive and beauty. It's going to become kind of your gateway as you come in from this new magnets being developed in this area. So the key developments that are going on, and I just drove by it, it's just about done. Jonquil Plaza, which is just about done, and then the Braves have already had their opening game, but the Battery continues to get developed, and the Battery is probably more of an economic impact than the Braves itself, but the two together are going to be pretty dynamic. So we looked at 3 opportunity nodes. One is Jonquil, which is relatively built out at this point. The other is where Rev Coffee is, that area. That's a really interesting area. We spent a lot of time. That was kind of a find in this study for us. It might not be a find for you guys. And then, of course, the obvious is, how is Smyrna going to respond to what's happening over by the Battery? What kind of opportunity is that for Smyrna? How can you leverage that? So pedestrian infrastructure is always a key goal in these LCI studies. And so there's a lot going on. Frankly, I was amazed. I mean, I did the studies back when Tom was with the Cumberland CID for Cumberland, and told them 10 years ago they needed to be more bike and pedestrian friendly, and they kind of looked at me funny. And they really do it. They're doing it on steroids now. It's amazing what they're doing. And there's some flyover pedestrian connectivity in the area. So we thought we'd continue with that kind of a theme. And we came up with a concept of the baseline. So you have, right now at the Battery, you have a bridge that's already about complete going across from the Galleria area. And then a long time ago, I've been a long-time Cobb resident, they built the bridge that goes from the Galleria over Cobb Parkway. So you have 2 legs already built. And we thought, well, why not just, and Tom actually has been thinking about this for a while, talked about a bridge across Cobb Parkway, which made sense. It's not a safe road. I wouldn't want my kids to cross it. When we designed this downtown, one of the rules Mike Sizemore had kind of instilled in all of us is, if you're going to design something, make sure your 8-year-old kid can run down the street and you feel safe about it. And Cobb Parkway's not one of those streets, So that connection was obvious, but then we looked back and said, why don't you just complete the loop? And then you would have like a 1 mile, almost like a High Line, that would connect all these together. And we ended up calling it the baseline. I called it the foul line to begin with. That had no traction. The second connectivity was there's a nice main street that's going to lead into the Battery and the Braves entrance, and why not extend that across? And then you have a park that could be expanded in your green space program, but it exists now, and can you connect the two? So if the Braves ever win the World Series again, they would have this celebration that can connect across. But even on the day-to-day operations, there would be stronger connectivity. And I don't know, you're probably familiar with this. Georgia Tech had done a parallel study, and they actually had that concept pretty strong in what the Georgia Tech students came up with as well. And then throughout the corridor, wherever you can, increase connectivity. It's kind of hard in residential areas, but Smyrna's residential is being redeveloped all the time. So those connectivities are easier than it is in most situations. So you can see us begin to build a network. So you have these 3 opportunity nodes. I want to take you up first, the one that goes across from the Battery. What we're recommending is you bridge across and do a community plaza and do high-density residential, office, hotel, big box retail, restaurants on the plaza, and local retail service. This is essentially within the whole city of Smyrna where you could probably, one of your chances to do some really intense gateway-type development, urban and development. And then going across south of Spring Street office, residential, high-density, transit hub, I'm going to talk more about that later, and local retail services. So this is where Cobb and MARTA can come together, right? And they're debating on where that should be, so we wanted to give them Smyrna's opinion in that, so you guys can be positioned to capitalize on that connectivity. The Baseball Boulevard is that connection back to the park. We actually did like a loop with a cycle track, and so that it would be an area where it'd create kind of a healthy community where people can take a loop around away from off of Spring Street in a safe environment and connect to the park or connect back down to the activity. This is the Sports Avenue node. This is just south of Spring Street and yet west of Cumberland Boulevard. There's a large opportunity for redevelopment there. We see mostly townhomes in that area. And then we're calling this Spring Road Arts District, which has already began. You guys have some arts festivals and a lot going on over there. We wanted to capitalize on that. This, I thought this was a real opportunity. It reminded me a lot in Roswell, which has a classic street that kind of comes off of Highway 9. It's called Canton Street. I don't know if any of you guys have been up there, but it's a classic move that if you can create a great, more pedestrian-friendly environment off these heavily traveled roads by making that a right-hand turn that's really easy. And that's what happens in Roswell. It's what can happen here. And then we expanded the green space. You got some less than desirable retail development there, so the green space expanded. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. So specifically to the zoning, I want to go through a few of the things that we're recommending you look at, and these where you can see the numbers are on the map. From neighborhood activity center to mixed use, 1 that's closest up near the Battery. 2 from urban residential to mixed use. 3 from community activity center to mixed use. 4 from expansion of the park to the east. We talked a little bit about that. 5 from community activity center to mixed use, and 6 from single family to park. Zoning updates to the corridor. Tier 1, maximum height of 15 stories, 40 to 50 units an acre. That's again the closest proximity. Maximum height, tier 2 would be maximum height of 10 stories, 20 to 30 units an acre. Tier 3 with maximum height of 6 stories, 10 to 12 units an acre. Reduce your setbacks. You have some really kind of outdated suburban setbacks in that area. And develop design standards for Spring Road. The thing about density, as long as it's done design right, pedestrian friendly, it's not going to be much of a challenge. Mixed use zoning update, single family unit size. This is a little bit innovative, but we have a drastic problem in the region with affordability, especially when you get into higher density. The construction cost is really expensive. You have one of the biggest job centers in the region here, so we're recommending you look at a 500 square foot to allow a variety of housing types and affordability. Update setbacks from, I already told you, to be more walkable. We would like to integrate arts throughout the corridor, so look at landscape medians that are beautified. You have some landscaping, we just wanted to make it a little more colorful and a little more safe, kind of encourage an environment that's more pedestrian friendly, that's more open. Some of your landscape is heavy, and that sometimes makes it, there's a rule in landscaping for security. You want everything above your head or below your knees. And if stuff is growing in between, then somebody could hide around it. So from urban environments, and you have some of that, it's kind of this post-properties mentality. I mean, John has done such a great job, but he's kind of over-landscaped a lot of places. Trail enhancement, lighting on the trail would help. It was asked for by a lot of folks, and you could do that lighting in an artistic way. I thought this was one of the more innovative things that came out we originally got hired, we talked about how can we do transit connection between downtown here and the Battery, and how can we improve connectivity along there. Nelson Nygaard, they operate all around the world, and they're familiar with some new technologies, and they're saying that, transportation is really coming from your phone now. And they said there's a system, there's a system that's a little bit like Lyft and a little bit like transit, but it would be a privatized system. And what we're recommending the public sector do in this case is just provide the stops. So instead of them coming to your house, you would just get on an app, and I'll show you this next slide. You get on an app and tell them where you want to go and choose where you want to leave. You can book days or minutes in advance, and then you'll know the fare before you go, and then you walk to be picked up. So you have a little covered bus stop area, and then you can track your in real time. So this is a kind of a privatized solution to that, and he knows the kind of density and the kind of traffic you have, and he said this is a really good test model. They're doing it in other parts of the country. The one service provider he was recommending in the study. And we were told in the transportation meeting that this is the kind of thing ARC would be excited about. They like innovation. I think it's an innovative way to look at tax dollars too in public transportation. It's more privatized. So you can probably get supplemental studies to move that forward on that one. Cumberland Parkway location allow alignment of premium transit along. Oh, this is important. I started working on this area, and my wife and I are it's a little bit side, but we're moving, we're downsizing, and we started looking at townhomes over here. And our son works for MARTA, and there were certain places around here where MARTA comes, and that was important to him for us to be on that line. And so this is important. It's important where you put MARTA. It'll mean a lot to the next generation, mean a lot to the workers out here. And I think Smyrna, you would benefit greatly if you got it put where you can leverage it. And so we came up with two locations, one along Cumberland Parkway or Boulevard that loops around, and another one that you would kind of come in and out. But both of them would kind of land in mixed-use areas. So that's a brief overview of a really thick study. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Going back to the Cobb Link aspect back in, what you're suggesting here, so there's no confusion, is that the existing transfer station that's behind Cumberland Mall, there has been discussion by Cobb County, if I'm not mistaken, that it should be relocated somewhere. And so, picking up on your earlier comment about at least letting people know what Smyrna thinks about it, even though the two locations that you've proposed are just outside official city limits. I wanted the Planning Commission to know, we're not talking about two other transfer stations. We're talking about relocating the existing one, correct?
Yeah, no, thanks for expanding on that. Yes, the location they have is not working well for them, and they would like to get it closer to where the Braves are, and Bob Ott has some opinions about where it should go, but we thought we ought to give you our recommendation. You're right, and then you're right, Smyrna doesn't cover all that quad over there. They have little pieces of property, probably an easy, I don't know if I could say this, but an easy annex area, as things redevelop. But yeah, it's not exactly, it's kind of off the beat. But they have one they're going to relocate anyway, so if they're going to relocate it anyways, here's two other opinions about where it can go.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to ask, if you relocate the transfer center, you're not talking about running the larger New Flyer buses. Are you talking about you running like smaller shuttle type buses? Is that what Nelson Nygaard is proposing?
Well, there's two things. What Nelson Nygaard is proposing along the corridor, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that was more privatized. They're smaller. They're like vans, They're smaller, privatized.
Gypsy type systems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the name's in the presentation. I can't remember the name right now, but you can get online and look at what they do. And I know, I'm sorry, I don't recall I don't think they provide the vehicle, but they might even provide the vehicle in this case to the private, vendors that would drive them. No, it would absolutely have to funding. It's not really have to be, yeah. And ideally, the ones that Braves are building are also hold light transit, so they're pretty big what they're building. So I don't know if you would continue that. That would be part of the discussion. Do you carry the light transit and cycles and pedestrians? You know, so it's something like. No, I don't. I don't. It's going to be all three. Like the Beltline, it's like rails with trails. You know, yeah. It's really, I think, when I tell people about it, I said it's like Copenhagen. This is a really high level improvements to the area. There's not many interchanges in the world that have, you know, those interchanges totally separate the pedestrian and the cyclist. And to do this, it's just really going to transform. Just like when people experience the Beltline for the first time, they didn't realize how close things were. I mean, this is just a mile loop, and a quarter mile is nothing. A mile on a bike is a 5-minute loop. You can cover the whole thing.
Explain the Braves Boulevard again. Is that a new road, or is that a high road?
Yeah, let me, we carefully knitted where we think it should go. Let me see if I could find it. And I thought, we called it Braves Boulevard, but then there was some proprietary information, so I think we might have changed the name. I might have slipped out of me if I called it that. I'm sorry. Baseball Boulevard, yeah. Baseball Boulevard. So you can see this aerial photograph shows you how it would knit around the you know, eventually a lot of that development's going to be redeveloped, but some of it's not. So we carefully knitted around the existing development, a loop. Can you tell? We're looking at that. This is HG. That's probably where I bought one of my TVs. And one of them, I think, you know, the lower one, I think could be done pretty quickly. You know, certain demolition will require, so it's not going to happen overnight. And when we do these planning studies and have stuff like this, I think it's really important to show the exact path. But a lot of people, I'd say, well, that goes over my building. Well, it's, you know, usually what happens is a developer comes to redevelop it and sees the value in it. It's not, I mean, I don't think Smyrna's going to be involved in any taking or anything to make this happen. It's going to be a private, for the most part, privately led effort.
And I think that's an important distinction, so the Planning Commission understands. What the study is saying is not a huge public infusion of money to start buying property to achieve this. It's basically, if council ultimately agrees to this, is when we get rezonings in and development plans in, that we have a base from which to work from, and to see if we can't then, you know, project by project start building, or using Bill's term, knitting together different things. So ultimately, you would have something that may resemble what's being illustrated here. And again, this is not an overnight solution. I mean, this could indeed take 20 years.
Yeah, and you have active businesses along it, but I think people are going to be, I personally think some of it's going to happen quicker than you think. Some of it's already happening, you know, like where the townhomes are.
Very interesting stuff.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bill.
Bill.
Thanks.
Really appreciate your time.
Not at all. No problem. Glad to be out here again. All right. It's on, is it on there now, or should I save it? Yeah.
All right, while they get,
I
go
do.
ahead, Mr. Sudworth.
I just want clarification back on the South Cobb motion, because I don't want to misunderstand what was intended. With what I think I heard on that was that you made no adjustments to 11 and 17.
That's right.
And that's the way I wrote that down. I just wanted to make sure that that was in everybody's agreement. So we will notify them to make sure that that's how they heard it. And if they want to pursue those changes, they've got to deal directly with council on that.
Right. Well, those would have to occur during the normal hours. The 6:30 thing is just for kids, but we did mention to them that they could work with you guys between now and council to get that verbiage corrected, right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page and that staff is representing what I thought you approved. Thank you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, any further discussion? All right, we have, last item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 13, 2017. The board members in possession of the minutes, are there any changes that need to be made at this time? All right, then can we get a motion to approve the minutes? Approve, Ms. Lightfoot. Second, Mr. Monroe. All in favor?
Already voted on it.
Minutes are approved 7-0. The business, this meeting is adjourned. I'm going to wait for 13 seconds at 7:20.
Yeah, it's been uploaded. We uploaded it last week.